You don't have a training program. You have an exposure program. And most companies are exposing their people, especially sales. They're exposing people, and then they don't understand why they're not learning.
Selfishly, I want to ask you a couple of questions, because in being the CEO of my company, I will tell you the single hardest thing that I've had to deal with is maintaining and training and make a sales team,
Yeah.
setters and closers. I imagine you have some for Lightspeed VT. How big is your sales team, if you can talk about it?
You know, it depends on if you're counting 1099s and everybody.
Yeah.
Because I have a kind of an affiliate army that's pretty big.
Yeah.
But I'd say like 8 internal.
8. Okay,
Yeah.
that's about what we have.
Yeah.
Curious, what are the things that you would, other people watching this, that you would give as pieces of advice to maintain a sales team? For instance, we found that it's a bit harder for us to maintain setters than closers because the outbound responsibilities make it so that we burn through them quicker. And then with closers, there's points where they're on a roll and then they may lose motivation and gain motivation. What are some of the things that you've learned as far as maintaining a sales team?
Well, I think, you know, what's important about maintaining a sales team is the ability to get rid of the turkeys. You know, if you want to attract stallions don't run with turkeys. And a lot of people are afraid to get rid of the turkeys because they don't, you know, they're looking for stallions, but they're not making room for stallions.
Yeah.
So I would say, like, don't be afraid of getting rid of the dipshits. That's number one. Because if I hired you and brought you in and you happen to be a stallion and you see a big circus, you see a bunch of fucking average ass dickheads, what would you think?
Well, my first thought would be those leads are being wasted on them, and those could be my leads that I could be using to
You would
make money.
eventually leave me.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because, dude, I'm bringing a stallion around turkeys and stallions, they don't go together.
Yeah.
You ever see stallions running across the plain? You ever see the turkeys in between their feet?
Right. They don't.
That's because there aren't any. They don't run with turkeys. So number one, get rid of the average, and you're going to attract the better. And so you constantly have to fucking make sure that you're grooming out the bottom. Set your standards and hold them accountable. That's number one. Number two, I would say, you know, ultimately they like compensation, right? Clear processes, meaning clarity. So compensation, clarity, and then culture. And what I mean by clarity is there's a process. There's a process.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, they don't have processes figured out. So where it's like they just want you to sell shit. So when you got a sales team and, you know, you're like, you know, the setters are, you know, higher turnover than the closers, who makes more money?
The closers.
Well, then that's fucking probably the reason why you have a higher turnover. Why? Well, pay your fucking setters more, and I'll bet you it slows down. Why? People quit because they're not very successful.
Yeah.
So train them better, make them more successful, give them a better pay plan, show them a direct path to closers. You know, hey, you're a setter now, but you're going to be a closer soon.
Yeah, that's what we've done. We've made them closers. I'm curious, when the training, we use Cole Gordon, is there anybody in particular or any techniques that you use as far as your training?
For what?
If you have someone you want to train to be better at closing.
Well, again, I mean,
are you training them? Like, how are they being trained?
Well, personally, I do train people, but the right way to train somebody is to make sure that you just include 4 key ingredients. Number one, good content, right? You got to know the right way to do it in the first place. A lot of people, they don't have good content. Number two.
Are you talking about your stuff, your reels and stuff like that to get the leads in?
Leads? What are you talking about? You're talking about training, aren't you?
Yeah, sorry. When you say good content,
good content, the right way to do it in the first place.
Okay, got it.
If I'm going to train you how to close a deal and I don't know how to close a deal and I'm telling you how to close a deal and I've never closed a deal and my content might be shit. Well, you got to have the right way to do it in the first place, which is good content.
Yeah.
You have to have good information. Number two, you have to have repetition. Most people miss that. Number three, you have to have practice. Most people miss that. Number four, you have to have accountability. So without these things, you don't have a training program. You have an exposure program. And most companies are exposing their people, especially sales. They're exposing people and then they don't understand why they're not learning. Well, because you don't learn, without those 4 things. That's why if you look at the military, how much repetition was involved?
Tons, yeah.
How much practice was involved?
That's all
How
we
much
did.
accountability was there?
That's why you get a court-martialed.
Okay, so you get good content, repetition, practice, and accountability. That's training.
Yeah.
We're not training our salespeople. We're exposing them.
We're
We're exposing them to good information, and they think, why aren't they working? Because you're not training them. You need to train them. And so our platform, by the way, allows them to be trained, tracked, measured, and monitored through a technology which allows you to fucking scale and do it with ease. So again, you can do it without a system like mine, but it's just fucking labor intensive and much more costly. So you take and you leverage technology. That's it. When you scale a business, there's only 2 ways to scale: people and technology. So you take a technology like Lightspeed VT and you say, I want to build a training system that allows me to create, deliver, track, and measure interactive content that allows me to develop people without having to say a word. So now the system doesn't train them completely.
Yeah.
It brings them up to speed. So by the time you talk to them, they're already filtered out the weakies. They've already filtered out the dipshits. You bring in 1,000 people and your system narrows it down to fucking 80. And now like your stallions are now dealing with stallions.
Does Lightspeed VT is that part of the system to narrow down which ones that
you do that through content?
Okay.
So like, for example, if you wanted a job at Lightspeed VT, I give you a username and password. You can make it on my website.
Yeah.
So you make your username and password and it pops up and it says, hey, how you doing, man? Hey, let me ask you a question. You know, do you think it's okay to drink alcohol as long as you're not drunk? And you're like, yeah, as long as you're not drunk. Okay, now again, that's an example just to show my point. I'm not hiring anybody that fucking hits that.
Yeah.
So now 1 million people hit that button. I don't even talk to you again. Why? Because the content basically leads you down. We'll talk. We'll call you, but we're not calling you. Guess what? If you'd have picked different answers, if you'd have went a different path, it would have connected you with my fucking...
That's crazy. We just started doing exactly what you said.
Okay.
Yeah, we just recently started doing that. And then we're going to Cole Gordon's seminar back in Cancun.
That's content, by the way.
Yeah. So when you said content, this is what I think. And I think it's a little different because a lot of your Instagram content is not directly related to Lightspeed VT, whereas almost all my content is almost, it's either directly related or somewhat related to Men of Action.
Yeah.
So my content, I feel the responsibility for my closers to get laydowns because they're fans of me enough to join the program. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So while I want them to do, I want them to do as well as they can as far as being salesmen, I also at some point need for them to be like, I just want to join because I'm a fan of Michael. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So both things I feel are my responsibility. So when I say content, that's what I mean by content. I got an interview with Brad Lee. Oh man, I fucking love Brad Lee. Now I want to join Men of Action. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.